Reddit just decided the best PS3 game of all time and the best games for over 30 genres. The results might actually shock you. The PS3 might be the most debated console of all time, right to the heart of the golden age of video games, competing with the Nintendo Wii and the Xbox 360. Today we're focusing on the absolutely stacked library of the PS3, and Reddit has just spent over the last month deciding which ones were actually the best. I grew up mostly with this generation of gaming, and I genuinely believe that this is where gaming peaked. Maybe not this one. So when I came across user 11QuickQuestion on Reddit, who spent over a month collecting community votes for the best video game in every genre for the PS3, I immediately messaged the guy asking for permission to document what he did and make this video. He was very kind and cooperative with my idea. All credit goes to him for hosting the polls and the hundreds of fans across the community who cast their votes for over a month and helped make this video possible. With that in mind, it's time to see what the best PS3 games of all time are, according to Reddit. The rules are simple. The same game can't win twice other than winning the best PS3 game of all time. So the best PS3 game might show up before the end, or it might surprise you and be saving itself for the final reveal. Stick around to find out. And if you want the full top 4 rankings of every genre, they're all waiting for you at the end of the video. In no particular order, let's begin. Most people would instantly think of God of War when you're talking about a violent power fantasy. Except Infamous 2 takes the lead, not just for the action, which is really good action. I'm mostly talking about the moral system that changes your powers and gameplay based around your actions and choices. When a fantasy is catered toward the players in mind, it really sells the fantasy aspect, making it feel a little bit more real and relatable. And when you compare it to a more linear power trip system of God of War, you begin to see why Infamous stood out and took the lead in this genre. Infamous 2 really does sell the power fantasy. There's not been very many culturally relevant games throughout gaming history. One of them, which even non-gamers enjoyed, was Guitar Hero 3. Winning the best rhythm game, and this time I'm honestly not surprised whatsoever. When I was growing up, I could not escape this game. Almost every house I went to had this game somewhere, and it had everyone involved. Why? Because who doesn't love music? Guitar Hero is the most iconic rhythm game series of all time, and the feeling of holding that guitar controller in your hand and finishing off a hard level song is just crazy. And let's not forget how we all felt attempting Through the Fire and the Flames for the very first time. A 2012 reboot of a long-time series has won the best vehicular combat title, and if you couldn't guess already, that would be Twisted Metal. This game's pure focus is to cause absolute chaos, and this entry heavily focused on multiplayer combat and had a mature dark story mode that's fitting of all of the explosive mayhem. Do you mean to honestly tell me you look at all of these vehicles and don't think that it just looks awesome? That these cutscenes don't feel like something straight out of an origin story of a Batman movie? This is intense, like seriously intense. Even now watching this, I get creeped out. Vehicular combat may be a very niche genre. However, most genres across this video are very saturated and some winners will be very close calls. And I'm a little shocked that Dead or Alive 5 was the winner of the best fighting game. I played very little of this when I was 10 or 11, and I always sucked at fighting games, so I didn't pay much attention to it. However, you guys who do know fighting games just love Dead or Alive 5. And from everything that I can gather, it's because it does fighting perfectly. It's smooth, it has deeper mechanics, controls and combos, it has a massive roster, it's got pretty good graphics for the PS3, dynamic environments and customization, which does give it a slight edge over Tekken Tag Tournament, which is what I expected to win. But it's also not the biggest surprise since Dead or Alive is one of the biggest fighting game series out there. The PS3 tried to reinvent itself in many ways, and one way was with the Move controllers. Just think of the Nintendo Wii for reference. And funny enough, a game that was released on mobile actually won the category of Best PS3 Move Game, The House of the Dead Overkill. Simply put, this is an on-rails gore fest, and I'm surprised it was even allowed to release on the Wii, but we're talking about the PS3. And what I do love about the game is that the colours across the art style stand out so much. The cutscenes are just too funny, but I don't have enough time to explain the comedy or the 70s inspired low budget dialogue. It's wacky and cheesy, and it's just funny. And one thing to mention, they do say the F word 189 times. One way the PS3 did try to reinvent things was with that dark and gritty era of games. and it is hard to find a standout title amongst those dark games. But when we look at it from a horror perspective, there's only one choice. Well, two. First and second place both went to Dead Space 1 and 2. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of this genre, but what I do know is that Dead Space is way over the top with so much I can't even show you right now. Its gameplay is so immersive, it has such detailed and sensual audio and visuals that really hooks you in, and it overloads your senses while it constantly induces paranoia and claustrophobia. It truly makes you feel alone and scared, which feels so real, selling the horror aspect. It will have you questioning morals and the reality of sanity, which are pretty heavy themes across the story, and it just makes it more brutal and hard-hitting. If extreme horror is your sort of thing, then you have to play it, or play the new remake if you don't own a PS3. Something that fills me with immense joy is seeing childlike wonder and creativity, a break from harsh reality, and I can't help but smile every time I see Little Big Planet. I once owned a Sackboy t-shirt and it was my favourite thing ever until it just faded away. Little Big Planet was incredible for learning the processes of creativity, exploring communities and interacting with other real people's projects as you explore through the worlds together, and you can take back ideas you found from others and implement it and expand those ideas into your own worlds to create. It was an ever-expanding loop of cooperation and creativity. I genuinely don't think there will ever be a game like Little Big Planet. At least for me, this wasn't just a platformer. It embodied so much more that can't exactly be described with the right words, and I do believe that this game sparked so much creativity into a generation of kids. Now, don't hate me, but when I looked at these rankings, I was genuinely confused at what Puppeteer is. I have never seen nor heard of this game in my life before writing this script. Then I opened up some gameplay on YouTube, and you know what? I vibe with this. The art style reminds me of The Book of Life, which is a banger movie by the way, but it really feels like a really unique adventure, and it has a couple mechanics for a side scroller I've never seen before. Just cutting, which makes perfect sense for the game's story and world, where everything is arts and crafts. Everything I've seen of this game feels rich and well thought out, and honestly I think it's convinced me to give it a go. These comments can say it way better than I can. When you think of puzzle games, you probably don't think of the best puzzle game ever made, Portal 2. Genuinely a masterpiece of game design, from its concept to its witty writing to its dark comedy, and Stephen Merchant absolutely sells this game for me.
Hey buddy, I'm speaking in an accent that is beyond her range of hearing.
Look, Metal Ball, I can hear you.
Run, I don't need to do the voice, run! Ended up giving me the worst possible job, tending to all the smelly humans. Sorry, no, I wouldn't say smelly.
He performs his character too well. It makes you think that's just him being himself, and what convinces me even more is that he only has 1.5 hours of in-game content dedicated to him, yet he recorded 16 hours of ad-lib dialogue. And while you're distracted by the comedy, you're trying to understand the minimalistic storytelling which fuses very well with the actual puzzles. It's hard to focus on the puzzles though, when what truly makes the game shine is its writing and performance.
Check this out, I'm a bloody genius now.
Estás usando este software de traducción de forma incorrecta. Por favor, consulte el manual.
I don't even know what I just said. Hey, up here. I found some bird eggs up here. Just dropped them into the door mechanism. Shut it right down. Bird!
Only a game as beautifully told as Journey would win the best PlayStation Network exclusive. Its underlying tones are filled with symbolism and nuance, and due to the no dialogue, its story is wide open to personal interpretation, with a lot of people viewing it as a journey through life. The game is just beautiful. The themes of companionship are told beautifully here. With one of gaming's most unique multiplayer systems ever designed, you quietly encounter one other real player during your journey, except there are no names, no chats, and no way to communicate with each other than a tiny sound. You have no way at all of knowing who it is you're playing with, and this only enriches the story's themes even further. And that is why Journey has won the best PlayStation Network exclusive. Before I move on, if you're enjoying this so far, a like and subscribe genuinely helps out more than you think it would. Thanks a lot for staying this far in the video. Now it's time to move on to the best FPS. And I know what everyone's going to think when I ask, what's the best first-person shooter? Well, you're all wrong because it's not COD, it's Killzone 2. And if you want a truly immersive first-person shooter, boot up Killzone 2. Turn the hood off and the crosshairs off and just enjoy. The gunplay mixed with that slow movement, the weight of each shot blasting out of your gun, and the war screams, they feel so raw and authentic. The gun sounds are out of this world, and it's a first-person shooter experience that can't be beaten easily. And that's all according to this guy on Reddit, because I never actually played the game. But wow, the way this was described, doesn't it make you want to hop on the game right now and give it a try? I know I definitely do. That sounds awesome. Imagine if it was a PS5 exclusive with the haptic feedback on the controllers. They would only sell the experience even more. It's time to talk about a series that became one of the largest IPs in the entire entertainment history. It's pretty obvious that the best online multiplayer game would actually go to Call of Duty, but it's Modern Warfare 2. This was when the series was in the beginning of its prime days, right there at the pinnacle of online multiplayer. Every other FPS was trying to be like COD. At this point, COD still cared about creating authentic campaigns as well as the multiplayer, which was just a happy accident that went incredibly well. The grasp that this game specifically has on COD's legacy is still spoken about today. The maps are so iconic, all the newer CODs are just rehashing them. The gameplay was so much quicker and smoother compared to Modern Warfare 1, and when you played online, if you somehow bossed the entire lobby and got 25 kills without dying, you would end the game right there by dropping a literal nuke on the entire lobby. I just about missed out on playing this game. Slightly too young to experience its multiplayer for myself, but I did enjoy the story quite a few years later, and I was old enough to be able to hear about how great the game was from everyone I knew older than me that did get to play it. Now, some of you may be surprised that it took this long to mention Rockstar Games, but I bet you can't guess which game is next. It's actually Max Payne 3, which goes down as the best third-person shooter for being so deeply compelling, so unique, and it's like a cinematic movie-like game. So, let me explain. The story explores a broken alcoholic dealing with his past, living in the gritty streets of Brazil. Third-person shooters are a very saturated genre, but Max Payne 3 feels so different, and I'll tell you why. It perfected the slow time mechanics that makes fighting feel intense and satisfying. But at any moment the fights can begin, since the cinematic presentation is incredible. It feels like you're playing an action movie, especially when the cutscenes transition into gameplay so smoothly. And I can't move on without mentioning the attention to detail. It uses the same game engine as Red Dead Redemption, and the enemies react so realistically to being shot. Environments are destructible to the point where even glass shatters into shards and paper is shredded into pieces. But right now I do have a question for everyone watching at home. Did you ever hate something so much you love it? Because that's exactly what Demon's Souls is. Demon's Souls is created by design to give you the hardest time possible. Every boss requires different patterns and strategies that you need to learn, and they are designed to be your worst nightmare. And you will die constantly. That's how the game's supposed to be played. The world is so oppressive in such a way it makes you feel like you are trapped at every corner, but you don't even know what you're trying to do because there isn't a story until you take time to breathe and explore. You start reading some random item descriptions you found in the corner of a dungeon, and then you begin to see why this wins Best Action RPG. The storytelling is beautifully subtle and hidden within a dark and punishing world. Nothing is explained to you directly. You are rewarded with a story for your exploration, wonder, and sheer patience. If I asked you to think of one genre that is the definition of hit or miss, chances are you'd likely say strategy games. They're so divisive and niche, but those few people who love these games really love these games. Which also says a lot about the game chosen as best strategy game on the PS3, Valkyria Chronicles. It's a strategy game that plays like an action game, where you control soldiers in real time, but it feels like a story-heavy JRPG that gives the gameplay meaning. It uses a watercolor art style that looks like a moving painting. Strategy games are not really for me, but looking at Valkyria Chronicles, it doesn't look immediately like a strategy game, and I think maybe that's why it won. It blends together multiple different vibes into its own identity. This next one shocked me a little bit, but I'm also kind of happy about it. Racing games are so often associated with something like Forza or Need for Speed, but one game I haven't really heard of before, but Reddit paid a lot of attention to, is MotorStorm Pacific Rift. This game really stood out across the racing genre, especially off-road races, and it's clear to see why. Just look at it, look at the locations, the way the dirt splashes against the screen, driving through a jungle, a beach, or even a volcano. It's a big shame we never got more of these games because I would genuinely love these. I'm very happy that the best racing game didn't go to one of the mainstream guesses, and this next one a lot of people will also be happy about. The best sports game didn't go to FIFA, didn't go to 2K, NHL, WWE, or even PGA. Nah, it went to Skate 3, the pinnacle of the Skater Boy era. This game is still regarded as one of the best and most influential skateboarding games of all time. The impact it had on our culture, in and outside of gaming, is undeniable. Over a decade later, this game still racks up a high player base, and that just says everything you need to know. It's just skateboarding done really, really well, and paired with the awesome music, you can really... This next game probably deserves a video of its own, all due to being voted the weirdest game on the PlayStation 3. And that game is Catherine Classic, made by the same creators of Persona, which should immediately tell you that this will be something you've never experienced before. But it's an action-adventure puzzle game, centered around the themes of love, betrayal, and the fear of commitment. I can't help but laugh when I look at some of these shots, because how do you explain this to somebody? It has fully animated anime cutscenes and voice acting, which helps sell the storytelling aspect of a love triangle, but at some points of this game, it feels more like a psychological horror than a simple love story. I am actually so surprised that Persona 5 won the best JRPG, and now before you get angry at me, it's because I genuinely didn't know this was even on the PS3. When I played this game for the first time, I was instantly hooked. It perfectly conveys the themes of freedom, trauma, oppression, and corruption, with so much swag to them all. All of the personas are aesthetically so cool, and the lore has so much humanity poured into it. I stand by that JRPGs are one of the best genres of media, and it has an abundance of quality games that feel so human despite most of them being centered around the supernatural. Human is the key word here. I really need more time to do this game justice, okay? You know what, fuck it, I'm giving myself more time. Right, in Persona 5 there's these things called personas which act like a physical, supernatural manifestation of your psyche, or consider it a mask that represents your subconscious or inner truth. Now in the base game alone there's 180 of these, and each of them are unique in its meaning, its origins, its psyche, its personality, and they're often portrayed as figures of historical, religious, or mythological symbolism. They go so deep that every one of them has whole wiki pages on them explaining its history, but more importantly, the stories behind characters like Futaba or Yoshizawa hit like a brick in the face, mostly because, the key word again, these stories are rooted in traumatic, real, human experiences and emotions. Everyone in the real world has trauma in one way or another. Something bad that shaped the way you think and feel, buried deep within you to protect yourself. The chances are there's a character in this game, or at the very least in this series, that you identify with on a deep subconscious level. A representation of your deepest sadness. And that's such a great thing, because if you can relate to some of these tragic characters in the game, it could open up opportunities to help you face your own personal issues. And you deserve that. I lent in so heavily on this point because I truly believe Persona 5 does this best. Okay, now moving on. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that Uncharted 2 is crowned the best adventure game. I would honestly be shocked if you've never heard of this before. I've played these games and they're honestly brilliant. They're beautiful, intense, and have a lingering sense of mystery behind each puzzle. And yeah, there's a lot of puzzles that really work your brain, but most importantly, it actually feels like an adventure. All of that fused with a cinematic story, and you've got a Game of the Year on your hands, which is funny because it actually won over 200 Game of the Year awards. Not many games can sell over 6 million copies in 2009. Now it's time for the big one, the game nobody is shocked about. GTA 4 wins Best Open World Game. I hold more childhood memories of San Andreas rather than GTA 4, and when I think about it, it's genuinely because at the time, for me, it felt too realistic. The world felt too large for my young brain to fully explore, and the dark themes of the story genuinely confused me and flew right over my head. Now when I've gone back to the game, I can actually appreciate what my younger self couldn't. The themes of an immigrant slowly learning the American dream simply doesn't exist through a life of crime that he didn't even want after fleeing war from his home country. Nico is such a well-written character because he faces the harsh consequences of morally questionable actions, all of which he's done for the sake of his loved ones. GTA 4 experimented with multiplayer modes and had such a large world to explore as well. I'm genuinely surprised that GTA 4 only won Best Open World when it could be classified for so many other genres. Rockstar is always on fire with their games. However, rules are rules, so since GTA 4 won Best Open World, that means the spotlight for Best RPG must go to Mass Effect 3, which absolutely deserves the title. After years of intense character development and story arcs across the last 2 games, everything comes to a close in Mass Effect 3, and the payoff is incredible. Not only is it a strong role-playing game, it's a strong decision-driven story game before anything else. But when you look at it at first glance, you notice the gameplay. It's hard to see what the focus of this game is because it does everything right. There's so much to love out of the Mass Effect series, and it's an IP that some people hold so dear to their heart and replay countless times because they're attached to all these meaningful characters. They want to see all the different dialogue options, the different endings, the different storylines to explore. There's a reason this has gone down as one of the best games of all time. Now, I don't think anyone is surprised here that Rockstar has appeared yet again, but this time they've won the very best DLC on the PlayStation 3, which would be Red Dead Redemption Undead Nightmare. Honestly, did anyone not like this game? It scared me as a kid, and it's still a little bit creepy now. It changed the entire scope of the original game. It's not simply added extra content. This was a real DLC. It changes everything in such a fever dream way. The story is so uniquely eerie and the world's atmosphere actually has horror aspects to it. Rockstar made Red Dead Redemption, which won over 160 awards by the way, and thought to themselves, you know what would make this better? Zombies. And you know what? It absolutely slaps. You know, I was kind of hoping that this game didn't win, but I can't disagree that Red Dead Redemption is the best game not published by Sony. Like I just mentioned in the DLC section, this game won over 160 awards for everything it did right and everything it stood out to do. It created an immersive, lonely, Wild West atmosphere that felt unpredictable at every turn. I mean that literally and figuratively, with random events like duels, kidnapping and bandit raids. One mechanic that made me afraid when I was younger was the witness system. If you committed a crime with anybody around watching you, you'd be in trouble. You'd have to either behave yourself with people around, or if there were any witnesses that saw what you did, you'd either have to run away or deal with them right there and then. The world is filled with well-written characters that feel alive. The story is emotional, mature and cinematic. And the main character, John Marston, feels relatable. Even in 2026, people prefer revisiting this game rather than playing newer games. Honestly, it's a good thing that the same game can't win 2 different categories because Red Dead Redemption would have won so many. What game would you say would win Best Start to a Series? Batman Arkham Asylum. And I have to say, I do love this gritty era of PS3 games, and the Batman games as a series are just incredible. Even shorter, more linear stories like Arkham Asylum does exactly what it sets out to do perfectly. I've been itching to replay these games, and this might be my sign. I need to see Mark Hamill as the Joker again. He is just perfect.
Surprise! You fell for the old sick Joker guy, Batman.
The game perfectly portrays these various different Batman villains, giving each of them the spotlight, having Batman explore through Arkham Asylum, having to face them all one by one to get to the end of Joker trying to overrun Arkham Asylum. If you've never played these games, you absolutely should. A lot of the time, they're series that do span over multiple generations, so we're going to focus on the best PS3 title of a series that started from a past generation. Meaning there are countless options, of course, but I'm very happy to see that Metal Gear Solid 4 takes this crown. I need like 3 extra hours to really talk about this game, but unfortunately I can't. The story is a bit mind-boggling in places, especially without a deep understanding of the previous games and lore, but narratively, once everything is understood, it's an absolute masterpiece. Hideo Kojima can do no wrong. Everything this dude touches becomes absolute cinema. And speaking of cinema, this game has a whole 70-minute long cutscene. One single cutscene. And if you thought that was a lot, this game's story is, give or take 20 hours long. And 9 hours of that is just cutscenes. That is enough time to watch 8 Pokemon movies and Lego Bionicle. Kojima tried to sneak a video game into his extended cut movie, but I gotta say, it is intense. The widely debated best soundtrack goes to Nier. Specifically Nier Gestalt, because it is absolutely beautiful, so good that it stops you in your tracks even in a boss fight just to listen to the heavenly score. It creates such a unique atmosphere. Nier, besides its OST, is a beloved, rich, mature RPG that centers around a father and his love for his daughter. The game's story is so structurally complex that it can only be truly digested to its full extent after multiple playthroughs, and people have even made videos on how this game had affected their mental health. It's very hard to talk about how great a soundtrack is without having deep knowledge on this exact topic. So I'd recommend trying out some of these tracks and closing your eyes for a few minutes to really take it in. Wow, I know we've just had the best soundtrack, but I'm willing to cast my vote here and say that Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance may be winning the best spin-off game, but it also deserves the best soundtrack in my opinion. I've played this game about 4, 5, maybe 12 times, and every single time I restart it, it feels like I'm playing it again for the very first time. Like, bro, this boss right here is from the very first 5 minutes of the game, and bosses just like it are scattered all throughout the entire playthrough. The story's themes are focused around the morality of war, the loss of humanity through technology, suppression of emotion and widespread mass control. That's only the beginning, as Raiden was faced with consequences of a nation's false patriotism, clashing ideologies, suppression of individuality, and warmongering for personal gain, as he seeks revenge and acts as a last beacon of hope in a world controlled by the elite. The scariest part of this game is how you begin to see parts of the story relate to the real world. It also does have a lot of comic relief moments, which feels right with the Platinum Games style. I love these devs. I've made a few other videos on their lesser known work, so you should check them out. The whole soundtrack also subtly resembles the strong themes within its lyrics, which hit so deep after exploring the game. It has over 10 lyrical songs in its OST that all deserve the spotlight. I'd recommend watching this video here for a complete analysis breakdown of the impact and meaning of these lyrics. For a spin-off game, this deserves so much more attention. There's a large number of games that deserve the best story, but it's fitting that The Last of Us takes that mantle. And to do it complete justice, I'm going to pass this one on to one of the biggest Last of Us fans I know, my friend right here.
Right then, that's enough of that cunt. Let's talk about The Last of Us. For me, this game is so great due to the characters being so realistic. Ellie at the start of the game doesn't know much about survival, but later through Joel learns how to aid us in our fights. The characters also slowly start to bond with each other, and I love that it's a slow burn over the course of the game. I think what also makes this game amazing is that it's not afraid to take a step back and let you soak it all in. There are some quiet moments in this game, and I love that. I personally love how it's not afraid to take time in building characters, or afraid to just slowly let you wander around a beautiful part of town with no enemy in sight, but still have that lingering fear of an enemy or zombie nearby. It really makes the world feel lived in and broken down by the infection. I think this game takes a simple story and enhances it with its incredible execution and cast of characters, making this world feel rich and lived in, with incredible gameplay to accompany that. It's brutally realistic and hard to master. Easily one of my favorites, and it will always have a special place in my heart. The raw emotion and realness I feel from this game is just incredible. Easily one of my favorites. Anyways, back to this handsome man. Take it away, sexy.
This era of gaming really did experiment a lot. Nobody knew what new innovative experience was right around the corner, and after a rising increase in popularity of the PC-based digital Second Life games, PlayStation decided to come out with their own version, which is PlayStation Home, which was a massive success. People devoted hours of their lives to roleplay in a virtual world. One could argue that the shutdown of PlayStation Home signaled the collapse of individuality in our society, since this game's entire purpose was about creating your own avatar, self-expression, customizing it however you like, and making a home for it to live in. Across this digital space was a world shared with other real human beings expressing themselves with their avatar, and at the time of shutdown, it had 41 million users. Sony just pulled the plug on its most innovative experience ever. Now we're getting pretty close to the end here, and the last one we have to discuss before the very best PS3 game of all time is the best PlayStation exclusive. And this one brings a tear to my eye. Ratchet & Clank: A Crack in Time. Despite having less than a year of production time, it's delivered what's still regarded as the best and most emotional Ratchet & Clank story ever, with over 18 games, and this is the best one. Some people, me, would argue that Ratchet & Clank was even the PlayStation mascot at one point in time. I've been playing Ratchet & Clank ever since I was 5 or 6 years old. I've played nearly all of the 18 plus games multiple times now, and I can talk about this for hours. I will spare you that for now though. A Crack in Time's cutscenes feels like they're pulled right out of a Pixar movie. You would not look at this and think, oh, that's a PS3 game. This series has had a plethora of different gimmicks and game mechanics, and explored so many different themes. There are loads of these small puzzle planets across space, and multiple explorable galaxies by the way. One gameplay mechanic you may recognise is this concept from Mario Galaxy. What most people don't know is that Ratchet & Clank did this very same thing 4 years before Mario Galaxy did on the PS2. The gravity mechanics had so much depth poured into it, they had hundreds of memory disks of just gravity coding alone in order to make this happen. And A Crack in Time expands on this mechanic and adds extra mini-games alongside it across space. In the previous games, you just enter your ship, choose a planet to go to, and you go there. However, here you actually fly through space to arrive at your next planet, which helps sell the immersiveness. I realised in post-production that I forgot to talk about one of the best characters, and that would be Captain Quark. He is definitely, probably, maybe, my favourite character in the whole series. He's like one of those phony characters that the whole world believes that he is their saviour and he will always save them, but he's actually kind of just weak and a little bit of a coward, but he does have some amazing character arcs in the series, and he's a recurring character that always lightens the place up.
Space. It's huge. So huge, in fact, that if you lost your car keys in it, they would be almost impossible to find. Luckily for Ratchet, Captain Copernicus L. Quark was on the case. His mission, rescue the Lombax's one and only friend. Yep, without Clank, Ratchet was alone in the universe. Alone. Alone. Alone.
You realize this ship has an ejector seat, right?
Ratchet & Clank is an action shooter platformer game, but A Crack in Time feels more like a story-heavy RPG with platformer and shooter elements. The story of this game was written when the previous game was still in development. Insomniac was under an insane crunch, but they did the impossible through hell. This game's gimmick for playing as Clank lets you control time. It's hard to explain, but you enter the Great Clock to repair time anomalies and solve complex puzzles by recording your movements as Clank up to 4 times simultaneously, and make all 4 recordings of yourself work together. This was the only Clank gimmick in the whole series I didn't eventually get bored of, and at the same time, Ratchet's playing segments of the game lets him explore the past of certain planets through these anomalies that Clank is fixing. Like I mentioned earlier, space is fully explorable across multiple planets with a customizable ship, customizable armor, and weapons, with various attachment mods, aesthetic options, and bonus abilities. Some of the armor in this game is the best in the whole series. And we can't go on without talking about Dr. Nefarious. He's one of the best villains in video games in my opinion, and he's the best villain in this series. He helps make this game shine. He is a sinister, yet comic relief villain that feels like the perfect cartoon blend that you'd see in a Pixar movie.
I don't have the capacity for love, Janice. I was cursed by a tribe of gypsy ninjas when I was a kid.
I know, Lance. I was in that tribe of gypsy ninjas.
It cannot be allowed to meddle in our plans! Track them down and annihilate them!
I plan to one day make a video on his story alone. He's not the only villain in the game though. Spoiler alert right now. The game's most emotional points comes from Ratchet discovering he is not the last remaining Lombax alive in the universe. He finds Alistair, who is a friend of Ratchet's dad's, and he witnessed the slaughter of the Lombaxes during a war. Alistair lives in peace until Ratchet finds him, and upon discovering the Great Clock's existence and Clank's ties to control the clock, his desire and greed leads him to becoming misguided and corrupted in order to use the clock to return back to the past and save his race, even if it might destroy the universe. Ratchet needs to face his internal conflicts of doing what's right or supporting the only other person of his race, and a friend of his dad's no less. And that ending, just wow. I replayed this game a few years ago, and even as an adult it gave me the same sensation as it did when I was a child. Once you finish this game, you feel attached to Ratchet more than any other game in the series. That is it in a nutshell, and I feel due to it being crowned as the #1 PlayStation exclusive to define the entire era, it deserved more focus. Which leads me to the only game in this video that's more important than Ratchet and Clank: A Crack in Time. The final verdict of the greatest PS3 game of all time is God of War 3. None of you should be surprised God of War 3 won the greatest PS3 game of all time. I kind of did already tell you. For those of you who only have a passing knowledge of the game or never even heard of it, let me tell you why it's the best. The game feels massive. Everything feels so substantial and grand, I can't think of any other words to describe it. The violence holds up 2 generations later, and there are some really brutal moments that shine, like gouging out Poseidon's eyes or ripping off Helio's head. You can rack up massive combos of such precise, smooth movement and cleanly switch weapons to rack up unique combos that don't feel like copy and pasted attacks. The pacing is done very well also. It perfectly blends unique bosses, intense combat segments and puzzles together. It's an ongoing cycle that always keeps a great sense of pacing to carry the story forward, which I think is needed because the story's plot may be a little flat in some places, but its execution is what makes up for all that the story doesn't do. The main plot of the story is essentially to destroy the mighty Mount Olympus and unleash chaos upon the world. The gameplay definitely delivers on this promise, and so much attention was focused on making you feel like you are destroying Olympus, making you feel as if you are Kratos and you are actually doing something impactful. And let's not forget about those sex minigames. The cutscenes were at the cutting edge of PS3 technology with such high quality graphics with no loss of performance. Just look at some of these locations, the art direction was just so cool. One thing I especially love in video games, but something that for some reason developers think it's taboo, is QuickTime events. If you've ever played a game with QuickTime events, you'll remember the panic you felt once you put your controller down to watch a cutscene and suddenly there's a pop-up on screen waiting for you. Even when you're expecting it, I personally believe that the extra detail that's put into these QuickTime events pay off a whole lot better than manually inputting a couple combos on a boss. I mean that visually, cinematically, and the weight of each hit. I do think that they should scarcely be used because it can get repetitive quick, but when it's used correctly and paced just right, now that's sexy. And God of War 3 gets this right. Like I briefly mentioned about the story, it may not be the morally complex story of conviction or deep human emotions like we've explored throughout this video. It just focuses on Kratos' revenge and anger after being betrayed by his father, Zeus, and his goal to kill the gods and to destroy Olympus. The game begins right after where God of War 2 ends, with Kratos and the Titans ascending atop Mount Olympus, and it's one of the most dramatic and incredible beginnings to any game I've ever played. I will never forget how this felt when I played it for the very first time. Later on in the story, when Kratos is abandoned and betrayed by Gaia, he's sent to the underworld, and this betrayal shifts his goals from just seeking revenge on his father to destroying everything, including Olympus itself. Rage and revenge had blinded Kratos more than ever. Except the game has these brief moments where Kratos is not all about anger and revenge, which is deeply explored in the newer games, but in God of War 3, he treats Pandora somewhat like a daughter, like the daughter he once lost, and this shows that Kratos does have human emotion within him. He may be the God of War, but after all, he is half human. And let's not forget all about that incredible fight against Zeus. Spoiler alert, in the end, Kratos realizes that there is a vast emptiness within his revenge, and after defeating Zeus, Athena tries to take the power of hope all for herself. Instead, after making his newfound realization, Kratos decides to release hope upon humanity by stabbing himself with the blades of Olympus. God of War 3 has a timeless legacy. No matter what, you can always head back to Olympus and it will always deliver a groundbreaking experience with so much replayability. Wow. This was such a crazy list to go through and it was so much fun to discuss. Once again, hats off to user 11 Quick Question for making this happen and the thousands of people who voted. But it's not over just yet. It wasn't just the winner that was counted. Now you can see the top 4 winners of each category. If you've enjoyed and want to see more videos like this one, like and subscribe to show your support and let me know that you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in another video.